Hello everyone, my name is Nathaniel Clark and welcome to part 3 out of this 4-part video series covering Canon Literature and New Literacies. Today we're moving into the second half, as you guys can tell, and we are talking about what exactly are New Literacies. Once again, this video project is made for my CI EDTHP AFAM CI EDTHP AFAM 492 class taught by Dr. Staples Dixon. Once again, as I stated, we are on part 3, and today we are working mostly on defining new literacies. So let's get right into it. My main source today for defining new literacies comes from the National Council of Teachers of English, also known as NCTE. Inherently, when I graduate, I will be a member of NCTE. As its name suggests, it is a council of English teachers, and its resources can, in my view, directly act as a great means to discovering new ways for an educator to teach, new goals, new mindsets, and exactly how to act or react to circumstances in the classroom. Today I decided to pull their definition of new literacy. It goes as follows. Literacy has always been a collection of communicative and sociocultural practices shared amongst communities. As society and technology change, so does literacy. This concept is very broad. However, that is, in my view, the positives of new literacies. From my perception, new literacies diversify educational literacy. It goes beyond the boundaries set by Canon Literature. And not just in who's creating them, but most specifically in format. Specifically, and throughout a lot of NCTE's piece on new literacies, they discuss heavily the prevalence of technology in our modern society and how new literacies pivot towards that. Mobile devices like tablets, smartphones, and computers are, in the 2010s and now the 2020s, readily accessible. Almost every student you're going to have in your classroom is going to have at least one of these to their perusal. Sometimes in a secondary level, even schools give them like tablets or computers. In various schools that I have shadowed, I have not had to worry about students having access to technology like that, as they already have those tools. With those tools, you need to bring in new ideas though. You need to bring in 3 main concepts to really teach your students with. And luckily for us, NCTE does that with these 3 new C's, which are consume, curate, and create. Specifically with the idea of consumption, we're kind of moving away from the ideas of like capitalistic consumption and more moving towards the ideas of understanding what you are consuming here. It asks you questions like, are learners analyzing and evaluating what they are consuming? Do they understand it? Do they understand what makes a piece credible? And with that consumption part, it really talks about the idea of understanding validity. And in our era where fake news is rampant, that's something crucial to focus on. You then move into the curate portion, which is the idea of, do students actually value what they make themselves? Do they understand their own voice? Do they understand the voice of other people? Do they understand what happens when they share content? Do they understand their own multimedia works? Is it valid? Does it follow certain practices? Is their voice present in it? We then move to the creation portion, which is quite comedically what I'm doing right now. I am making a video essay to share my thoughts, my ideas, and my knowledge to an audience of not just my professor, but to the world at large. Any person can stumble across this video and watch it. And I need to understand how I am communicating my information to certain audiences. Is the way that I am speaking in this facet different than how I might speak to someone who may have less knowledge on this topic? Am I constructing a work that I am able to respond to later on in the future? This kind of higher order thinking really comes into play in this new multimedia age. However, that's not the only part of New Literacies. A big part of New Literacies that I greatly appreciate is the new development of changing texts. I discussed heavily when talking about the Western literary canon that I feel like those texts have become stagnant. We are covering the same texts that people in the 70s and 80s were covering now in the 2010s and 2020s. We, as educators, need to move our students away from that. We need to move our students away from that predominantly white, predominantly cisgender, predominantly masculine concept and idea. Here I have 4 books that directly fit away from moving that concept. First, I do want to focus actually on the 2 books on the edges. The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison is a text that talks heavily on stereotyping and self-perception for people of color in society. Then on the other side, we have The Setting Sun by Osamu Daiza. I hope I am pronouncing that correct. He is a Japanese author, and his works were greatly influential in Japanese culture. They have recently started and have been gaining more and more respect in the international field, and I feel like his texts are, in my view, what I would like to teach in my educational classroom. There's a lot of great imagery, there's a lot of great writing, and his texts, in my view, are just infectious. The 2 in the middle are interesting cases that I want to highlight. First one on the left is Persepolis by Marjane Satrapi. This book, it was written, as you can see, has now celebrated its 20th anniversary, first being published in 2003. But it is a retelling of Marjane's experiences in Iraq in the 1980s. That sort of experience and that sort of voice is rarely highlighted in educational spectrums. And I feel like her memoir, which is surprisingly a graphic novel, tells it in a beautiful fashion. That mixing of imagery with text exceeds and excels possible expectations in storytelling. Speaking on graphic novels, the novel right next to it, Fun Home by Alison Bechdel, is a similar circumstance. Alison Bechdel, in her, if I remember correctly, her first memoir, it is a graphic memoir or a tragicomic, as its title calls itself, details her coming over the loss of her own father, her coming out as being a member of the LGBTQIA+ community, and also dissecting her father post-mortem, looking into him being closeted for the majority of his life, and how her own sexuality intersects with her father's. All of these texts are absolutely beautiful. They're some of my favorites, and I'd love to involve them someday in my educational classroom. However, coming along with new literacies, and it's something I kind of hinted at earlier in this conversation, is that texts aren't the crucial factor of new literacies. It's about talking about media at large. So why not talk about film? Why not talk about music? You can dissect film and music in the exact same ways that you can do with text. I have a few options here. I have Parasite, the iconic 2019 film directed by Bong Joon-ho. In the middle, I have the 1990s film Good Will Hunting, directed by Gus Van Sant. And then on the left here at the top, I have Kendrick Lamar's To Pimp a Butterfly from 2015. And then Arlo Parks' debut 2021 album, Collapsed in Sunbeams. All of these here are here for varying reasons, specifically Parasite for its concepts and execution on talking about capitalism, Good Will Hunting on talking about mental health and struggles surrounding that. To Pimp a Butterfly I have as a representation on talking about oppression and for the Black community in the United States, specifically against what we discussed in another video of WSP, or the white supremacist patriarchal ideology. And then here with Arlo Parks, I have as a representation of music as poetry. The singer-songwriter's lyrics just bleed off the page with beautiful metaphors, and I just really love it all. Before I close out this, I want to focus on one of the biggest parts of new literacies, which is the idea of culturally sustaining communication. By tearing down the boundaries of the Western literary canon, we can focus on the stories of individuals who were once silenced and oppressed by Western society. We can share the experiences of individuals whose stories have not been shared before in a means that gives them their proper respect. By talking about them, by respecting them, we can, as a society at large, give these people the position to talk about their own stories, rather than having a history textbook try to misleadingly tell the tales of a society that is sadly lost to time. However, it's lost to time from a Western society. They may still continue, but you can't get their story from a Western text. You need to get it directly from the people living in that circumstance. And that's the biggest positive about new literacies, is you're getting first-hand accounts from individuals who you wouldn't have gotten from before, either through digital means or through new text means. And that is why I love new literacies. Thank you very much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you all in the next video.